Our guest in this segment is from the 16th Senatorial District in the state, Senator Patricia Rucker. She is the chair of GovOrg and joins us via telephone. Thank you, Patricia. We very much appreciate your participation in the program this morning.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be on, and good morning to all of you.
Good morning to you. Where do we find you this morning?
I am in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Oh.
So that means that I had to wake up earlier in order to be part of this show. Just want you to appreciate that.
I do, sincerely.
Yeah. What are you doing in Jackson Hole? Is it a conference, Senator?
No, visiting family.
Oh, visiting family. Okay.
Oh, very nice. What are your temperatures like?
So it gets cold in the evenings and mornings, around 40s, but then it heats up to 80s in the afternoon.
Oh, well, if we can, we'll send some of our 95 to 100 your way if you're missing it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Do you know anything more about a special session yet, Patricia, in terms of dates?
So still no dates. We're continuing to meet almost weekly, and really just looking at the issue from every angle and having experts report back to us. There was a study commissioned to be done on, I think, different ways that we could find savings in the program and not cut services. So we're really looking at every potential way to see what we can do to solve the problem. I could tell you that we're still not anywhere close to actually having a recommendation yet from any party. I think it's just the House and the Senate and the governor's office just trying to get everybody on the same page.
Is the problem that if you keep the 80-20 split, the costs just become too much for the employees on the premium and the state for the 80% half? Is that the gist of the problem as you see it?
So, no, I don't necessarily think that's an issue. The whole entire program is too expensive. Healthcare has just gone through the roof for everybody, and there's just not any, I don't see any lining in the clouds for it to be coming down anytime soon. So what we are trying to discuss is what's a realistic way to make this be as efficient as possible, and how can we offer a good, health plan to the state employees that is reasonable, but also, does not, every 2 years essentially create a crisis in our budget. So we have to find ways. One of the things that the study is doing is it is doing a comparative analysis of how other states offer their state employee plans and what's different between theirs and ours.
Senator, we've been hearing that the governor spent a lot of time on PEI. This has been his number one thrust for the last several weeks. The House and the Senate also been involved. Are we closer to solving the problem, or are we going to pull back and say, well, the problem cannot be solved?
I'm not going to lie to you. That is a very possible thing that happens, because it is a very, very hard and difficult thing politically, and also, thinking humanitarian, to try to roll back something you've already been giving folks or employees. But having said that, I do believe that there are ways that we're going to be able to make it be a more efficient program. I have a lot of faith in that. And in the few discussions that I've had with some of these experts that are coming before us, I think it is very clear, which happens with a lot of government programs, there has been very little done to make it efficient, very little done to cut costs. It's just there are folks that are within the program, they're not thinking, let's make this program work as efficiently as possible, and instead is, sure, you want us to do that, let's just tack it on without any idea is there a better way. So I think there is going to be some ways that we're going to make it better, for certain.
Is it appropriate you use a very crude medical analogy of what you just said? In the past has been a Band-Aid approach. Now you're looking at intensive surgery?
I think that's actually a pretty good way to describe it.
Well, he is a doctor, Dr. Bill Stubblefield.
Well,
A different type of doctor.
In a Joe Biden way?
Doesn't have anything to do. How do rocks come into play here?
Doctor of Geology, yeah.
Senator Rucker, this is Mike Allers Jr. Great to be here with you this morning. Hey, first time on the radio, with you and not in person. I wanted to get your thoughts on education has been core to your platform and to your message and what you champion in the state Senate. Billions of dollars has been released by the Trump administration's, what's left of the Department of Education. How can West Virginia use these funds to the best of its ability and use it better?
well, so this has all been very recent, what's happening with the Trump administration and what decisions that they have made. My understanding is that they are planning to offer a tax credit that we're right now in West Virginia not going to be eligible for because we chose to do education savings account, not a tax credit for our citizens for their educational expenses. And the federal tax credit is meant to be on top of state tax credits. It's a tax credit both for the businesses and corporations that give money into a tax credit funding organization in a state, plus a tax credit to those parents who are taking advantage and getting educational things for their family, their children. So I think actually, Mike, I'm going to have to really dig into exactly what it is that Trump is saying he's doing and see what we have to do in the legislature this next session, maybe even in a special session, to ensure that we're going to have access to that money.
Is there going to be a gap in funding to West Virginia?
Well, there's already a gap in funding because there are things that federal government has said they're not going to fund any longer. So we already are going to see issues in this very next school year that are not going to be funded any longer by the feds, and we have to decide as a state whether we want to fund it ourselves or let those extra programs go. But that's different. So Trump has literally just announced, and I think it was just last week, that he wants to do a federal tax credit benefit for states that have this tax credit mechanism, and we just don't have that. So we are going to have to create it if we want to take advantage of that, or if we want to have our citizens take advantage of it. And certainly I don't want to ever not give every citizen every opportunity to do what they think is best for their children.
You mentioned some programs would not be funded this year, totally independent of the gap, the tax credit this year. What are some of the programs that will not be funded this year, some specifics?
So again, I have not dug down to the exact line items, but what I have heard is already this year they've decided they're no longer funding things that I think they've been funding for years. Some of it was because of COVID. Some of it was just in general giving extra funds for things like hiring additional support staff, hiring a resource specialist in a certain subject. And of course, like all federal programs, it has all sorts of conditions. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in it. You probably should bring someone in from the state school board to go more deep down. But what it sounds like to me is that some of those extra personnel that schools have been using and taken advantage of and was funded through federal programs, it's no longer going to be funded by the feds after this year, which means that we as a state need to decide, are we getting enough benefit out of that we need to fund it ourselves? And we may decide to do so if we can afford it, or we may not be able to. I just don't have the numbers yet. And like I said, this report just came out a week ago. I just haven't had the time to dig in.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be pursuing this too much, and I appreciate the fact that a lot of this is brand new information. You need to do more research. But what is the timeline? Will these gaps start as soon as school opens, or do we have a few months to see what the state can or cannot or is willing to do? What's the timeline?
My understanding is that it is not going to be funded in August, September, so this upcoming school year. which means it is not going to wait for the state to have another, regular legislative session, which is the reason I mentioned we may have to do a special session. But I really have to get the exact details from the State Board of Education in order to be able to know how big a problem is this going to be. Is this affecting, a dozen schools? Is it affecting 55 counties? How big of an issue is it? And I just don't know yet.
Senator, and this isn't to dive into more specifics. This is maybe, I guess, to set up a potential hypothetical. The Trump administration says that they want to federalize school choice, almost taking, some of the ideas from West Virginia's Hope Scholarship, that you helped push. If it's then federalized, does that negate the Hope Scholarship? And if it does, can that money kind of be shifted over to fill in the gap if there is a federalized program?
So a tax credit is different than an education savings account because you must have the money to buy whatever it is you feel you need, and then you can get a credit on your taxes. So it's a different thing than an education savings account, which is just your state tax education dollars are following your child. Having said that, I will tell you that in terms of what I think what Trump's goal seems to be is he wants to just give more options to families because not every single state has tax credit or education savings accounts or vouchers or whatever. So he wants to give an opportunity to all parents that they might be able to get a break on their education that they're pursuing for their children. But like I said, we have never had that tax credit option here in West Virginia. We did actually discuss it, and it was actually discussed when we were discussing school choice and having those debates. Normally, you want to be able to provide something for those who don't have the money ahead of time to pay for whatever it is they need. So that's one of the considerations I think led us to an education savings account. But it is definitely something that you could do concurrently, you could do instead of, you could, depending on how you write your program, you can make it a either or, you use this or you use that option. But we haven't had any legislative discussions about it at all. I have not spoken to a single other legislator to get their feel on what they think we need to do. I think it's just too soon, but it is a really interesting possibility for us being able to do who knows what in the state.
You use the term interesting. Mike Hornby says there's going to be about $25 million cut into West Virginia. That gets beyond the point of being interesting. That becomes a kind of a crisis mode.
Well, if that's an accurate number, that is a very significant amount of money that will be difficult for us to match. But again, we need to see what exactly is impacted. If these are additional things that we started doing from COVID, and we can't necessarily expect that it continues forever. That's very different than something that is longstanding. We've been doing a very, very long time, and is part and integral of what the school system is offering. So I really would like to see what that actually means.
With these changes being proposed, potential changes, it sounds to me like this might make the next 60-day session a very busy one, because I don't know that this sort of thing can be discussed and solved within a special or an interim session. Senator Rucker, would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree. We're going to have a very, very busy next session, yes, for certain.
Yeah, a lot to tackle there. Maybe some things you don't even know right now, things that you're not even aware of. Right. Because life changes, right? Want to get to the decision made recently I know you're aware of this one too. Raleigh County Judge Michael Frobel granted a preliminary injunction for families seeking religious exemptions to West Virginia's public school vaccinations requirement. Apparently, this ruling applies only to these families and is not universal around the state. First, your thoughts on the judge's ruling and how ultimately, it could apply around the state, Senator Rucker.
So, of course, I I'm definitely in agreement with Judge Frobel's decision. I was, as you know, trying to solve this through legislative action during the session, and we passed a bill out of the Senate that would have, dealt with this. So as you know, in 2023, we did pass an Equal Protection for Religion Act, and that act, being the most recent act regarding this issue, basically superseded our previous vaccination requirements in the state of West Virginia, and said that we, the state, cannot substantially burden a person's exercise of religion unless it is the least restrictive means of furthering that governmental interest. And I think Judge Frobel was basically agreeing and saying, you guys have this vaccination and you're not allowing an exemption, and that is in violation of this Equal Protection for Religion Act. And this preliminary injunction is, as you said, just for these students, but a hearing on the permanent injunction will be coming. We don't know exactly when, but they're discussing dates as to whether or not there'll be a permanent injunction in place. And I think, again, this is part and parcel of why we, the legislative branch, must act on this issue.
Do we anticipate that happening before August the 19th when school starts in Berkeley County?
I don't see it happening before.
We're
going to, of course, wait for the permanent injunction hearing to happen, and there's no telling how soon that will be.
We had in last week the president of the Berkeley County Board of Education, Jackie Long, the vice president, Melissa Power, and they were in disagreement as to how to apply this during the school year, that they were conflicting messages from the code, the law, and the recent ruling as to what a state board of what the local boards of education should adhere to. Any thoughts on that conflicting information? Any advice for the local school boards?
Well, I will tell you that, again, the state board has given the local counties the advice that we're going to ignore the executive order of the governor, and because the law still says this. I think that legally they're in very, unstable ground when ignoring the governor's executive order, because it is an executive branch privilege that is part of our law. And they're saying that they're just going to ignore. In addition, Dr. Singh, the Secretary of the Department of Health, issued grantings of religious exemption to students, and these school boards are deciding to not follow the exemption granted by the Department of Health, and that is definitely in law. We allow the Department of Health to grant exemptions. So they're choosing to ignore that part of the law too. So again, I think that, to me, it's clear that they're on not steady ground by ignoring, two very, very clear directives from the executive branch. And this is part and parcel of why it would be best if we, the legislative branch, would clarify things through law.
I think that's the main request from those who are put in conflict on this, Senator Rucker, and that is the legislature needs to clarify what the law is, because we've discussed this a lot, as you might imagine, and an executive order from a governor is lawful unless it goes in violation of current law. And that's the discussion point, because the current law would appear to indicate that the executive order is not lawful.
I have to tell you, that's not totally true. So the governor's executive order cannot go against the Constitution, but a governor's executive order can supersede law for a limited amount of time. We give the governor that authority, and we do give him that authority because of particular times in which it's not always easy or feasible for the legislative branch to act. So it's always for a limited time. It's not forever. He can't write law, and he can't make it, last longer than a year, but he does have the authority to supersede law. He just can't supersede the Constitution.
Yeah, that's a good distinction.
And in this particular instance, he's actually trying to, the executive order is actually saying, hey, you, the legislature, you, the schools, you are ignoring the Constitution, because the Constitution actually gives these parents the right to follow their religious beliefs. So he's actually standing for the Constitution in this executive order.
It's an interesting grinder that these local boards of education have been put in on this one, because it seems like no matter what they do, they can't win on this. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was going to pick up on 2 points. You've addressed one. The other one, the Secretary of Health. The health department was addressing medical waivers as opposed to religious waivers, were they not?
So the Secretary of the Department of Health has the right to grant exemptions. So whether or not it's religious or whether or not it is medical, that he can write exemptions. And that is one of the privileges that we, the legislature, have given him through that law that we have.
That's interesting. I'm surprised that the Secretary of Health has jurisdiction over anything other than health matters.
Well, we can choose to change it. That would be something that's granted to us. And again, I believe that law does need to be updated for certain.
And Senator Rucker, final minute, it is yours. Anything you'd like to say to address the audience?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate having this discussion. I do want to emphasize that at the end of the day, 46 out of the 50 states grant religious exemptions to vaccinations, and in West Virginia, we're one of the very, very few that does not. I think at the end of all of this discussion, we're going to find a way to be able to give parents that ability to follow their religious beliefs.
Senator Rucker, enjoy the more moderate climate of Jackson Hole while you can.
Thank you so much, and still look forward to going back home.
We appreciate you waking up early to do this on your time off. Much appreciated.
No worries. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Senator Patricia Rucker, chair of GovOrg.